DC Comics is rebooting their universe once again. And this time it's going to be the Dawn of the DCU, even though the DCU's been out there for, I don't know, decades upon decades at this point. They need a reboot, absolutely. And I've got all the details. I've got some very interesting covers to show you. What can we glean from that? And there's definitely something going on with Nightwing by the end of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I also have an update on Joshua Williamson, the architect of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now let's get to the details that we do have. DC Comics announced the next era for its universe, Dawn of the DCU, and it all spins out of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7. The series finale hitting shelves December 20th, where the remaining heroes of Earth Prime will have an all-out battle with Deathstroke's Dark Army, but what DC is calling the final war is just getting started. The Justice League has been restored alongside the Infinite Earths, but of course, there's a cost. DC Comics needs a reboot. That is absolutely correct. But if they do not get a reboot as far as their editorial and creatives, I think it's all for naught. It doesn't matter if you reboot Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Justice League, the Teen Titans, everybody back to an original state or some type of new status quo. If you have the same terrible creative voices behind the DCU going forward, it's gonna fail just as hard as it is right now. As long as Tim Sheridan, Stephanie Phillips, Clune Rad, Vita Ayala, a lot of these bad writers, John Ridley, are associated with DC Comics, I think people are going to see DC Comics as the plague, and they're not going to come back. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the information we got regarding the golden era and Jeff Johns returning to an ongoing at DC Comics is a harbinger of things to come, and perhaps Jeff Johns will have a bigger creative voice as far as what DC Comics are going to do in the future. I absolutely love DC Rebirth. They outsold Marvel for a short period of time, but what they did with Rebirth was the right answer for DC Comics. Go back to the basics, go back to the core of who the characters are, and restart their universe, and hopefully get it right this time. Last time, they veered right out of Rebirth as soon as Dark Knight's Metal hit, and they said, you know what, let's go in a more edgy direction, and let's start destroying our characters once again. You'll notice they're having to reboot their universe faster and faster and faster. DC Universe Rebirth only came out a little over 6 years ago. Future State came out less than 2 years ago. That was the last reboot of the universe following Dark Knight's death metal. That's when they started importing all these terrible creatives. They keep having to reboot the universe because they don't have a solid foundation and core as far as their creative voices in editorial. If they bring the same people back, they will get the same result. As far as the covers that we have from Dan Mora, conspicuously, none of the JLQ heroes are present in Dawn of DCU's initial marketing. John Kent, Nubia, Yara Flor, Jace Fox, Joe Mullen, Jackson Hyde, and other heroes comprising the JLQ are all missing from the marketing. The classic Big Six of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and presumably Barry Allen Flash, along with Nightwing, Starfire, and Cyborg of the classic New Teen Titans era, and Shazam are all present. This is great news if what this marketing is what it appears to be, a move away from a generation of failed comic book characters created by an entire generation of failed comic book writers. These were all good ideas in theory, but the way they were executed, they dropped the ball every step of the way. They never wanted to create good characters. They only wanted to create good representation. And when representation overtakes who the character is or what the point of the character in the universe is, it absolutely fails every single time. We've seen that with this generation of DC Comics heroes. They're going back to the mainstream heroes, the ones that we like, and hopefully those will be the stalwarts, the flagship characters moving forward. Obviously, Batman's going to be there. Superman, Wonder Woman, the Trinity are going to be whole, but it also appears we could be getting like a Brave and the Bold, Green Lantern, Flash team-up book, which I think would be very good. I think people would like that one. Obviously, you still want to restore Flash as a solo title to the prominence that it was before, where it was a perennial like top 20 seller. But it looks like the new Teen Titans, the best era of Teen Titans ever, are going to be coming back. The Marv Wolfman, George Perez team with Nightwing in the lead, but it looks like they have bigger plans for Nightwing as well. And an emphasis on Shazam is a good thing. Billy Batson is Shazam. They just relaunched it with a new character taking over, Mary Marvel, the new champion of Shazam. Shockingly, it's failing right out the gate. All these ideas are failing. Get back to your core heroes. Get back to the stories people actually want to read. And then when you establish it, maybe you can experiment here and there, but do not destroy your entire comic book universe again. I don't know how many times people are going to give DC Comics a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chance to disappoint them and really mess up a reboot. I'm sure you've noticed Nightwing's presence on the main cover of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, and the variant overlay cover seen here paired with the somewhat cosmic multiversal context of the images, opens the floodgates to questions as to what his role will be in the DCU in the new era. My one issue with this is that we can see that it appears Dick Grayson Nightwing is ascending. What did we see at the end of Dark Knight's death metal? Princess Diana ascending. What did we see at the end of Doomsday Clock? Wally West ascending to become the new Dr. Manhattan, the all-knowing guy in the chair and all that stuff. I'm tired of DC heroes like ascending at the end of these stupid events. Just let Nightwing be Nightwing. But if they want to make Dick Grayson Nightwing a focal point and an anchor for the dawn of the DCU, like the one character that restores hope in the universe, like they did in Wally West and DC Universe Rebirth, I'm all on board for that. If he dies and ascends and becomes like some type of cosmic entity, no thank you. I do not want that. But we do have the other Dan Moore cover that shows him with the new Teen Titans. He's going to have a major role to play in the finale of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Hopefully they can make Dick Grayson Nightwing the A-list character that he should be. Another interesting cover we see is the Batman and Superman mashup where they become one person. We saw this in Batman Superman World's Finest #4. The Dark Knight and the Man of Steel merged together after an intense battle with the Devil Nazah and a mind-controlled Hal Jordan, creating one of the most incredible new combo characters ever with a terrific new look. Absolutely, that character looks dynamite. It's got a very cool look, very peculiar. You know it's Batman, you know it's Superman, but you're wondering what's going on. What does this have to do with Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths? Obviously, that was introduced by Mark Waid, but it seemed like it was just going to be like a cameo. It was just like a one-off, but apparently this will be part of the Dawn of DCU. I don't know what that means, but I do find it somewhat interesting. A lot of people are going to be wondering, Jim Lee's not going to be running this thing. I don't think Marie Javins is going to be running this thing. Who could be running this? Obviously, James Tynion is out. He doesn't really work a lot with DC Comics anymore. He's doing his own stuff on Substack. Scott Snyder, another big creator for DC Comics. He would have been their flagship creator for several years. It feels like he's out. He's doing a lot of projects at Comixology. I think he's doing something at IDW. He's got his own Substack stuff. I don't think we'll see Scott Snyder returning. A lot of people assume Joshua Williamson will likely be the architect or the key creative voice as far as the writers in Dawn of DCU. And this is what he had to say about the reboot. It's always darkest before the dawn, and now we're there. A new dawn of the DC universe. This whole event started with death, so here we end with life. Our epic last issue shows why the DC universe is at its best when it's adding and growing the mythology. From the start, we said this series was a love letter to the DC universe and the big events, and readers will see that this issue, Daniel and I put a lot of love into every page of the story. It's been one of the most rewarding and intense projects we've ever been a part of. And here in the end, we launched the DCU into a new exciting direction. There's a big problem with this. I don't think we're going to see Joshua Williamson associated with DC Comics all that much. He might write a series here and there, but he just announced a lot of big projects on Substack himself. It sounds like he's betting on himself and is moving away from DC Comics after this. This thing already blew up in their faces when Scott Snyder did that with Dark Knight's death metal. He did the event, he set up the reboot, and then he wasn't a part of it moving forward. Once again, it just appears because of what we know regarding Substack and Joshua Williamson moving on to new creator-owned projects, that Joshua Williamson is going to set up the event, which he definitely was the architect of. He's going to execute it, but then he likely won't be a huge part of the Dawn of DCU reboot itself. Who could it be? I mean, obviously, Mark Waid comes to mind. We already see that they're implementing some of his ideas in a Dawn of DCU, but would you want Mark Waid to be like one of the focal points of your publisher? The guy doesn't come off well. He's kind of a jerk to people. I don't think that one's going to work. The best case scenario is Jeff Johns returning to a prominent creative and directorial role as far as DC Comics, but he's probably too expensive. I think the reason we got all these terrible writers is because they're really cheap. Jeff Johns definitely isn't going to be cheap, especially if he's just like a writer. Maybe they'll bring him back as a new chief creative officer or something like that, or the general manager, and throw a boatload of money at him. But I don't see that happening either. There's a good chance that it's going to be the blind leading the blind once this reboot happens. And if that is the case, then it's all a big waste of time. We shall see. We've seen far too many reboots as far as DC Comics go. I personally am still fond of DC Universe Rebirth, but it was only about 18 months. I had this video talking about how it died, just really bad decisions on the part of DC Comics and their leadership if you want a reminder of what happened. Also, there's a link in the video description if you're on a mobile device.